Yo, yo, yo. Hey, guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast on a Monday. And every Monday, we do something called Metric Mondays. Our goal is to keep you focused and help you improve your practice and your life by focusing on some key numbers or metrics. And here's one thing to consider. Do you feel a lot of pressure around your metrics? Well, you shouldn't. Metrics don't create pressure. Unclear expectations do. In today's amazing podcast with one of our brilliant coaches, Robyn Theisen explains how you can change that and you can take the pressure off the metrics and put them on expectations. So please listen up. Hope you guys enjoy this, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. Robyn and I were just telling stories on a Monday. You know, it's Metric Monday today, the beginning of another week. And I just want to thank you guys for showing up because we keep doing this. You keep bringing it. You keep showing up and keep listening. And you've told us we love Metric Monday, which is a short little bite-sized piece of information. God knows there's enough long podcasts, but we're going to create short podcasts that you can use right away. And we like doing them on Monday. And I have my amazing co-host today. Her name is Robyn Theisen. She is a brilliant coach here on our team. And today we're going to be talking about this pressure feeling. So a lot of times dental offices, dental teams, and dentists think, that metrics create pressure. They don't create pressure. Unclear expectations do. So, Robyn, what does that even mean? Let's unpackage that.
Yeah, I feel like doctors can be afraid to have metrics in place with teams. They, hear things from team members of that, then it's all about money and all those things. And I really believe that it's not the metrics that create stress or create that. It's the silence that does, or the lack of leadership that really does. And I look at metrics as a way to measure standard of care, and they're a way to define and align and reinforce for the teams, so that otherwise teams feel pressure because there's not any direction or they don't really know what they're working towards. So defining what role specific KPIs are, it's not really about control, it's about creating clarity, ownership, and then accountability across the board for all of our team members to know who's responsible for what and how we get there.
Yeah, totally. And so let's just go a little global. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news or not, but data is kind of big it's a kind of big conversation in the world, especially in the great state of Wisconsin, where they're building massive data centers, like multi-million-dollar, square foot facilities to house this thing called data. And I'm also paying attention to these kids that are graduating from college with data science degrees. And they have jobs 6 to 8 months prior to graduation for crazy salaries because big brands have understood data is so important to their future. And here's why. Data removes all emotion. Data it's not emotional. And if you are a leader, if you're a dentist and you're having a conversation with anybody and you're not talking data, you're just talking. You're just blah, 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 blah. You're talking about how you feel and all that stuff. So a lot of your pressure doesn't come from the metrics. It's about unclear expectations. And so we're going to unpackage this a little bit, but let's start with what it looks like when you don't get it right. It's wrong in a practice. So what does that look like, Robyn?
Yeah. Well, there is not a real definition of success. So leadership is not defining what success looks like. The leaders or doctors typically assume that everyone knows what matters most. And really the KPIs only come up when something's going wrong. There's not a celebration of them. It's only this reaction to them when something is going wrong. You also see that pressure rises because there's not a scoreboard. And I tell teams, like, if you think about going to a sporting event, and if there were no scoreboard, how would we know who was winning or losing? And so it gives people, it keeps us on track with where there are opportunities and where there is cause for celebration. low sense of ownership from everybody on the team because they're not sure who's responsible. Their responsibility is unclear and goes back to that if everyone's responsible, nobody is. And the metrics end up feeling more like criticism than guidance. And so it's not a team problem. It becomes an expectation clarity problem where really people need to know what their lanes are and what they're responsible for.
Yeah, so true. And you mentioned scoreboard. It's so true. Like, I can't even think of one thing that would work without a scoreboard. Think about a cardiologist that had no scoreboard for all of your metrics. Better yet, if you've coached your kids' teams, I was the worst at baseball in high school, but my son loves baseball. And Little League, I've always been the assistant to the assistant. Now I'm just the DJ because they won't let me on the field anymore. But it was fascinating to me that fourth grade boys could figure out in a 7-inning game, if we're behind by 4 runs, how we have to strategically perform to win this game. Nothing synthesizes a group of 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade boys more than a scoreboard. And nothing synthesizes baseball parents better than an app called Game Changer, which shows you how well your children are actually doing. I'll never forget. I tell this story a lot, but it's one of my favorites. I thought my son was the greatest baseball player ever, and I couldn't understand why he was batting 9th. And then I saw his batting average, and I'm like, he shouldn't even be batting 9th. He should be sitting on the bench. He's gotten a lot better since then. But it puts you in your place. It also helps you engineer the whole thing. So back to the point is if you're a leader, you have a scoreboard, regularly your team can be aligned on what are the things now that we need to do to move the needle. Now, I shared this in the last podcast, but what we do is not magic or rocket science here. We just get teams organized around their vision, create a few priorities every quarter, and then help them pick a few, I did say a few KPIs. Yeah. So that pressure goes away. And most of them are leading indicators that lead themselves to lagging indicators. Mm-hmm. So that pressure goes away. And Robyn, you and I were lamenting on I feel so bad sitting as a coach 25 years ago in a morning huddle, listening to a team go, listen, we're behind on collections for the month. Let's find some money. Let's get our collections up. Now, we don't do that anymore. Now, it's so fun to watch a team get aligned around a few KPIs and a few priorities, and you can see a group of 10 or 100 team members move the needle as one, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is fun to look at the metrics in a different way and be able to know there are several different pieces that can move things. And when everybody has an accountability, you end up all going in the same direction. Yeah.
So let's dissect this. What does it look like when you get it right as a team? Take us inside of a practice that's doing this right.
Yeah. What I see, what seems to work best is when leaders, they define what the KPIs are. So if you have for each role in the practice or each function, as we talk about, our functional accountability chart, if each of those roles or functions has 2 to 5 clearly defined measurable outcomes. So they're not subjective, they're measurable outcomes that they are, that their role is responsible for. And with those, that leaders can explain how those KPIs connect to the vision or the financial health of the practice, or what measure is that for our standard of care and how we're going to achieve that based on what we, who we say we are. And then those expectations are documented and reviewed in your meeting rhythms, right? So we're able to see progress in them or regression, whatever that looks like, but we at least know what the score is so that we can adjust.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you think about this, your data, and I say this a lot, but what gets measured and reported, what gets measured, it gets improved, but what gets measured and reported on improves exponentially. I borrowed that from Dan Sullivan, and it's so true because you get a team, let's even talk about hygiene, or better yet, let's talk about, let me pick one. Unscheduled active patients is always one of my favorites. So if you have 724 and weekly, somebody's responsible for reducing that number. So they go to 710, then to 690, then to 650. Every week you're going to see it's going to get better. And then the hygienist will eventually say, stop. Right. Stop. There's nowhere to put these people. Yeah. You actually have a good problem now. Now you've got patient selection issues. So you can see that. Hygiene reappointment is another one. Sometimes, it's well below 92% and sometimes down in the 80s. But if we can get a great hygienist who cares, who's leaning into it, they're going to want to be above 92, 95% in their hygiene reappointment percentage, meaning the number of patients that they saw today, what percentage of them were actually scheduled back in the practice. Therefore, you're tethering more and more patients to the practice. My point is it is so easy to see a practice get better and that pressure come off when the expectations are super clear. And when you don't have clear expectations, you're just creating fertile ground for conflict. And unresolved conflict always becomes a crisis. So make sure you have some clear expectations around metrics. So
it also makes that those performance conversations, when you are working on agreed upon metrics and measurable outcomes, those conversations become different. It removes that subjectivity when we have agreed upon measurable outcomes, and we can bring those into the conversation of how that performance is looking.
Yeah.
And it allows team members to really know how they contribute to the practice success as well. Not just that everybody has the same number. When they're individualized, team members can see what their performance does for the overall team and the overall practice.
Yeah. I think this is one of the funnest parts of our job, being practice coaches. We don't talk about this much on a podcast, but it is so predictable. The only thing that's unpredictable are behaviors or leadership. Obviously, we got to improve. But Robyn, you're such a great coach. You could take any practice of any size and go, I can fix this in no time. We just got to improve this, and this around the doctor's vision. It's very didactic. It's very logical. It's not, that's the fun part. I guess that's the thing I want to share with you if you're a dentist. All of this is fixable. No matter what you're feeling, you can fix it. And if you don't know which numbers to fix and focus on, that's why you get a coach. A coach can talk to your team in a way that you can't. Yeah. Trust me, Robyn freaks me out sometimes. I say, yes, ma'am, to her. It's fun. And they go, she's so great. Yes, because she doesn't work in the practice, and that's what she does. She's an expert at all this. So, but good stuff. So any last thoughts you want to give to, people listening? What are some other things people can do today to improve the practice? Any thoughts?
I think, look at the different team members you have. What are some measurable outcomes that would measure success in that role? So, just pick a few that you could assign to each team member, meet with them and align on what those expectations are and get their buy-in to start tracking some of it. And then add those to your weekly or monthly meeting rhythm to start reviewing some of those and really get your team members involved in not feeling like they're micromanaged, but more feeling like they're led and they know what their contributions are to the overall success of the practice.
Yeah, and that's what it becomes. When they can weigh in, they can buy in, and then you can go, oh, wow, how did that happen? Tell me how this is working. You can also share best practices across your team. So if one hygienist is doing well with another metric and another isn't, it's a great opportunity to share best practices, Another thing, working with a coach, is you can go, listen, I don't know how this works up front. And a great coach will save you so much time in saying, okay, listen, let's think differently about how we collect money. And you go, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. Yeah. And you never would have thought it that way. So it's so fun. But it's good stuff. So Robyn, thank you so much for showing up on a Monday.
Happy to do it. Good to see you again.
Awesome. Stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for showing up to another Metric Monday. Remember, metrics don't create pressure. It's all the lack of clarity and unclear expectations around what are we building? How are we doing this? And when you get a few of these right and get your team involved, and most of them are leading indicators, it changes everything. So pick a few of those measurable outcomes and get your team involved. I promise you, it works. So again, thank you guys for showing up. So join us back in the BPA, Best Practices Association, where we're building the ultimate ecosystem for supporting independent private practice. If you haven't done so already, do it now. What are you waiting for? And you're going to see we got a great community back there. So keep showing up. So hope you guys enjoyed this. And until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. Hope you guys enjoy your Monday.